Hi everyone. In this video, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to try our hand at some vintage crochet. This is a nice, cute little doily that I've had for years. I believe it was my grandmother's or my great aunts. It was probably one of their mothers or their great aunts, and it's just been passed down along to me. It was made using some very fine thread and a very small hook. I'm not sure exactly how old it is, but I'm guessing it is probably at least 80 years old, if not more. So I thought it would be fun because I don't have the pattern for this. I thought it would be fun to try to recreate this and see what I come up with. It doesn't look too complicated, so I'd really like to see if I can figure out what was done, what stitches were used, how many chains were done up here to get this nice mesh chain in between these, I guess, what are flower petals. So we're gonna see how difficult this is. I am not going to be using the traditional cotton fine thread when I do this because I want you to be able to see what I'm doing on camera, and I also want to size this up a little bit. This one here is about 9.5 inches across in diameter, so it is a good size, but I'm gonna see if I can size mine up just a little bit. And also, I really don't want to be using a tiny crochet hook and tiny thread. So for this, I'm going to be using the Mary Maxim bamboo stripes. It is a sock yarn weight. This is a nylon bamboo wool mixture. It is classified as a 1, so it's still rather thin. However, it's not going to be as thin and difficult to work with as sort of the fine cotton thread weight yarn. So with that yarn, I'm going to try a 3.5 millimeter crochet hook. So let's jump right into this and take a look at the center, which is where they start. So it looks like we start with a ring, and I'm not going to use a magic ring because they have this center space, so we don't need to worry about closing up that hole of our ring. So I think I'm going to chain maybe 5 or 6 to start, and then slip stitch back into the first chain to get us that ring. So I've got my yarn, and I'm just going to put a slip knot right onto my hook, and let's chain 5 and see what happens. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm going to slip stitch right back into that first chain, and that will give me a very small ring right there. All right, next it looks like we've got a double crochet, chain, double crochet, chain, double crochet, chain, double crochet. I believe it's 6 times. Let's see. We need 1, 2, let me count the spaces here. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think that's where they started, but you can see there's not really a space there. So there should be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces total. So I'm going to go ahead and chain 5 to start, and that will count as a double crochet and then a chain space. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll work a double crochet into the ring. And I think there's actually, I'm going to put 2 chains in between to make sure that I've got enough chain spaces so this doesn't become sort of bunched. So I've done a double crochet and then the chain 5 is a double crochet, chain 2, and we've got a double crochet here. So chain 2 and double crochet back into that same ring, center ring, chain 2, double crochet, oops. So I've got 3 spaces, I need 4 more spaces, chain 2, double crochet, chain 2, double crochet, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Here's our 6th space, and chain 2, and I don't need a double crochet because it's right here from the chain 3 that we started with. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and then this will be our 7th space. And 1, 2, I'm gonna slip stitch to the 3rd from the bottom of my chain 5. All right, how are we looking? So far, so good. Next, so we've got that first round, and now I'll bring you closer. We're working the start, the very bottom of the, I'm gonna say they're double crochets, to create the solid petals. So it looks like we work 3 double crochets separated by chain spaces. And again, I'm going to work 2 chains. It's hard to see on camera, but it does look like there are 2 chains separating those solid stitches. So I'm going to work 2 chains and then work 3 double crochet, 2 chains, and then 3 double crochet. And I believe, let's see. So we're going to start with a chain 3, but actually I'm going to first slip stitch into that first space because those 3 double crochets to start these solid petals are worked into these spaces. So slip stitch into that chain 2 space and then chain 3, and that will count as a double crochet, and I'm going to work 2 more double crochet into that same space. I'm going to do my chain 2, skip to the next space, and then work 3 double crochet. Chain 2, whoops, next space, 3 double crochet. And just work that all the way around. And you'll be on this right here, those 3 double crochets. And then what I'm guessing is that we're just going to increase. Let me turn right side. So we're just going to increase on each side. So this first round of the solid petal has 3 double crochets. The next round will have 5, next round will have 7, 9, 11, and so on. Now we just have to figure out how many rounds we increase before we can start decreasing. So I'm just continuing with my chain 2 and then 3 double crochet in the next space. So I do think that this is a fairly easy pattern if you know sort of the basics of crochet. You should be able to pick this up pretty easily, and it's probably a pretty standard vintage type pattern. One more space, so I'm going to work 3 double crochets into that last space. Now to get over to where we started, I'm going to go ahead and chain 2 and slip stitch to the top of my chain 3. So we kind of have like a little pinwheel type thing so far. All right, for the next round, and this will be the same pattern going forward, you're just going to make sure you are increasing on the solid petal parts, but the chain 2 is always going to be the same all the way up. For every round, we're going to start with a chain 3, and you're going to work a double crochet right back into that same stitch. So it's going to be a little bit hard because you want to work 2 into that 3rd stitch, 1 in the center, and 1 after your chain 3, 1 more into this very first stitch. So that would make 2 double crochets on the end, 1 double crochet in the middle, and then 2 double crochets on this end. So now we've increased from those 3 double crochets from the previous round. We've now increased by 2. We've got our chain 3, which counts as a double crochet. We worked 1 more double crochet in that same space, so that's 2 double crochets. 1 double crochet in the middle, that's 3, and then 2 on the end, that's 5. After we do that, we're going to go ahead and chain 2. You're going to skip over the space and always just work into the tops of those double crochets. So we chain 2 and then work 2 double crochets into the first double crochet, a double crochet into the next, and 2 double crochets into that last double crochet. And now we've increased to 5. We're going to chain 2, skip the space, and then do the same thing over the next 3. We just want to work into those double crochets, working 2 double crochets on each end so we can increase, and then at the end, chain 2, slip stitch to join. All right, I've worked that off camera. I've just worked my last 2 double crochets over that last set of 3, so I'm back where I started. Chain 2 and just slip stitch to the top of that chain 3 to join. All right, it's looking good so far. So you're going to repeat that sort of pattern all the way around. You're always going to start with a chain 3, and that counts as your first double crochet. You're going to work a double crochet right back into that same stitch, and that will be your 2 double crochets on this end. For this round, we have 2 stitches before our last stitch. So we're just going to work a double crochet into each of those stitches. You just want to work 1 double crochet in the middle stitches, and then when you get to the very end of that set, you're going to work 2 into that last one, and that will increase your rounds by 2 for each of these petals. When we get to the chain 2 space, we're going to chain 2, and then into that first double crochet, we're going to work 2 double crochet, over the next 3 stitches, we're going to work a double crochet. And if you ever get lost on your stitch count, just count. So this one had 3, this one should have 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This one should have 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 2 on the end will make 7. So they're just going to kind of V out until we get our decreases. So if you're interested in making this along with me, just continue working this pattern around until you have 21. I just counted this when I was off camera before. You should have 21 total double crochets before we start that decreasing. So each one of these solid petals will have 21 separated by a chain 2, 21, chain 2, so on. So you're just going to repeat the increase rounds until you have 21 on each side of these petals, these solid petals. I'm going to go ahead and work all of this off camera, and then I will come back and we'll see if we can figure out what they did for the decrease. And as we decrease, we're going to be adding in these chain mesh kind of stitching which separates these petals. So that will be a fun thing to figure out. All right, I am back already. Did anybody catch my mistake right here? This is where we started the round, and I put 2 double crochets into that first stitch, and I missed the next one. So I actually, for this first little solid petal, had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 stitches instead of 7 because I missed one right here. And I didn't realize that as I was filming it. All the other ones I did correctly. Didn't realize it until I'm starting this next round, and I just happened to count my stitches, and I only had 8. And I'm thinking, no, I need 9. So I figured out that I skipped a stitch here. I didn't want to have to rip all of this out, even though it wasn't very much. I decided to just fix it up here. So I added in 2 double crochets around the same spot as where I missed this one on the previous round. So now I have 9. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it kind of will even out at the end. So if you find yourself doing this, and as you're working the next round you realize that maybe you skipped a stitch somewhere, you can make it work without ripping back all of your work. Now if you've missed a lot, and it's like the whole round you've missed a stitch and your count is off, you probably should rip it out and redo it. But if it's just one stitch, just fix it on the next round. You should always have an odd number. We started with 3 on our first round of working this pattern. Then we go to 5 on the next, 7 on the next, even though this one has 6, I fixed it up here, but 7 on this one, and then 9 on the next. The next round will have 11, then 13 and 15, 17, 19, and finally 21. So just wanted to hop on really quick and show you how to get around that if you find that you've made an error in one of these rounds. So I'm going to go ahead, finish working this up until I have 21 stitches on each of these solid petals, and I will catch up with you then. All right, I have worked all the way around. I now have 21 stitches running across each of those double crochet solid sections. Here's our vintage piece. So you can see this is a much larger scale version of this. We're right about here, and we still have to decrease to get this point, plus add in this mesh spacing in between each of those solid petals. So this will be quite a large piece, much larger than this one, which I'm fine with. But just look how pretty that is using this sort of multicolor variegated type yarn. Super boho, super chic. I just love this. All right, so now let's take a look at our next steps. So we've worked up until that very last increase row, and now you can see we decrease. At first I thought we were going to be decreasing by crocheting 2 stitches together, but it looks like what we do is just actually miss each double crochet on both ends. And that creates like a little bit of a more of a ledge type of a situation here. So you can see those last stitches on the end, they're just not even worked into. So that's easy enough. We'll just work a decrease rows for the solid part of this pattern, just skipping each of those last double crochets on the ends. So that's easy. Now we need to figure out the mesh. From what it looks like, the chain stitches get longer the further up you get, the closer to the end we get. So down here, it does look like there are only 3 chains until we get here. And then it looks like the middle chain stitches are increased by at least 1. So let's get you up a little closer so you can see what's going on here. So those first ones, it looks like it is a chain 3 maybe, and then working a single crochet into that chain space from our last increase row. And then the next round, it looks like that's still a chain 3. I think that's still a chain 3. It's hard to tell with the fine yarn on this pattern. But I'm guessing that we do have to increase a little bit in the center here so it lies flat and it doesn't start bunching up. So that might be something that we just have to play with the further along we get. If we need to add more chains to kind of make sure that this flattens out a little bit, then we'll do that. And as you can see here, we do have a little bit of curling up, but I think with some blocking, and once we get that mesh stitch and these decreased a little bit, it will start to flatten itself out. We're going to move on with our first decrease round. I've joined here to that very first double crochet, or the chain 3. Since we want to skip this one, I'm actually going to go ahead and slip stitch right into the next one, and that will be my starting point. So we're starting on that second double crochet stitch, and then we're going to start the round by chaining 3 for our double crochet and work a double crochet all the way along until you get to the last 2, because we want to skip that last one. So I'm going to go ahead, work my double crochets all the way across, and since we are decreasing by 2, 1 on each side of each of these solid sections of this round, I should have 19 total double crochets on each of these sections. All right, I have 2 stitches on the end. I'm going to work into the next one and leave the final double crochet stitch alone. I'm going to skip right over it. Now we need to create our first 2 chain spaces. Here's the last one from the increase row, just that single space. We're going to create 2 spaces, and then the next round we'll have 3 spaces, and so on. So I think to do that, we want to start with a chain 3. And again, maybe depending on the hook size, the yarn you're using, you may have to adjust these chains in between those solid petals to fit whatever project you're working on with whatever yarn you're working on it with, so it doesn't bunch or is not too tight. So I chained 3, and I'm just going to work a single crochet into that chain space. I'm going to chain 3 again. I'm going to skip over this first double crochet and into the next is going to be where I'm placing my double crochet for this section, and then just work a double crochet all the way across, skipping that very last double crochet on the end. So this gives us our 2 spaces. And I think all of these on the sides, so all of those chains running up the sides of our double crochet solid petal sections are a chain 3. It's just in the middle, in between those parts, that we need to kind of increase our chain count so it lies flat. So again, for this first round of decrease, you're going to be skipping the first and last double crochet of each of these solid double crochet sections, and in between them you're going to chain 3, single crochet into the chain 2 space, chain 3, and then continue on with your next double crochet section. I'm going to be working this all the way around off camera, and I will meet you back here for the second row of our decrease rounds. I've worked all the way around. So I've got my 2 chain spaces now over those other chain spaces as we're working up. Here I am, this is where I started. So I just worked my first chain 3, single crochet into that chain 2 space. I'm going to end with a chain 3 and slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. And that gets me around for our first decrease round. And it's looking good. I'm hoping this video isn't going to turn into a yarn chicken video. We'll see. I have a lot here, but you never know. It's going down quickly. For the next 2 rounds, I'm going to be doing the same thing. We're always going to start, for each decrease round, I should say, for each decrease round, we're always going to slip stitch over to the next stitch, and that will count as us skipping that first one. Then we're always going to start with a chain 3, and then we're always going to work a double crochet all the way across, leaving 1 stitch open at the end. I've worked my double crochets until I got to the end of this little section here. I'm skipping this last stitch, just going to completely ignore it. I'm going to chain 3. We're going to work a single crochet into that first chain space, chain 3, work a single crochet into the next chain space, chain 3, skip that double crochet on the end, and work a double crochet into the next. And then I'm just going to repeat this around. Double crochets all the way across, leaving this one unworked, chain 3, single crochet in the space, chain 3, single crochet in the next space, chain 3, skip the first double crochet in the next stitch, and repeat. And that will get us our 3 chain spaces for this round. So here's the 2. We're on this round right now, working those 3 chain spaces. We're going to work this pattern for another round. So right now we're on 3 spaces. We're going to work it one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces. working just chain 3s. And then I think we're going to have to increase our chains in the center. But again, it probably depends on the kind of yarn you're working with, your tension, your hook size. There's probably a bunch of different factors that you'll need to take into consideration when working those chains in between these double crochet sections. So I'm going to go ahead and work this round, creating my 3 spaces, and then one more round doing the same thing. You always want to skip the first and the last double crochet of your double crochet petal sections, as we call them, and then work a chain 3, single crochet in the chain space, chain 3, single crochet in the chain space, chain 3, and then repeat it all the way around. So I'm working this round where I have my 3 chain spaces, and I'm going to go ahead and work one more round, so I'll have 4 chain spaces when I meet you back in just a second. I've made it back on this round, and as you can tell, I've added a stitch marker where I start each round. As you're working these chain spaces, it does become a little bit more tricky to figure out where your starting spot was. So just to make it easier on myself, I'm going to use a stitch marker, and that will let me know that I am back at the beginning. So I've chained 3, and I'm just going to slip stitch to join this round. And I've got my 4 spaces now. And I can tell that I need to add some more chains in between those spaces as I'm working that section, because it is starting to curl up a little bit more, and I definitely want to make sure that it is going to lie more flat. So for the next 2 to 3 rounds, I'm going to be working the same pattern, but when I get to my chain spaces, I'm going to start with a chain 3 and single crochet in that first space, and then I'm going to go and start working chain 4s, single crochet, chain 4, single crochet, chain 4, single crochet, and then chain 3. So it looks like all of these chains before you start working your double crochet section are chain 3s, but they do grow in the center. So I'm going to keep it the same. I'm going to work a chain 3 before I start this mesh section, increase my chains as I need to, as I keep progressing and increasing my rounds, decreasing this section. But as I'm working along, you can tell that these chains definitely get a little bit longer. So I'm going to start with my chain 3s and then work chain 4s, chain 5s. It looks like there's a couple of maybe chain 6s, and this last one looks like it's almost a chain 7. So I'm just going to kind of have to play around with it and see what works best for this yarn and my hook size. I'm going to work all my chains, single crocheting into each of them from the previous round. And then before I start working my double crochets, I'm going to go back to the chain 3 at the very end here, and then work the decrease part of this section. So hopefully that makes sense. I'm a little bit concerned with this yarn. It is going fast now, but we'll see. We'll see if we play yarn chicken at all. So again, always start with a slip stitch, chain 3, and then work your double crochets across. It's a really simple pattern. I just would like to know a little bit more detail on exactly how many chains are in this, just to make sure that I'm getting it right. But I think that we can figure it out just by trial and error here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to keep working these rounds, making sure that I am decreasing on each side of these sections of double crochet. So I've got 2 double crochet left. I'm going to work into the next one, do my chain 3, skip that double crochet, single crochet into the space, chain 4, single crochet, and hopefully this will even it out a little bit. Chain 4, single crochet in the next space, chain 4, single crochet in that last space, and now we can chain 3, skip that first double crochet, and then start this section here. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to increase as I need to those inner chains, keeping those outer chains a chain 3. Before I forget, I'm going to put my stitch marker in this chain 3 so I know that is the beginning of my round. All right, so what I'm going to do is work the rest of this off camera, just doing the same pattern we've been doing and increasing some of those chains as I get further along. You want to work this pattern. Your last round will be where you have 3 double crochets left. And this last round does look like it has at least 7 chains for those interior spaces. This one, probably not a chain 3. I guess we'll just have to play with that when we get there. It looks like it's a chain 5, maybe a chain 4. But again, depending on the yarn you're using, your hook size, this could all be different for different people. Since this was made with a very fine, thin yarn and a tiny hook, more chains might have been necessary, or maybe I'm going to have to add even more chains to this. I don't know. I'm going to play around with it. I'm going to finish this up, and I will let you know exactly what I do in just a second. Well, guess who lost at Yarn Chicken? And I only have one more round to go. So I've decided to do my last round in some of this Patton's lace. I've had this yarn for quite a while. It is a 2-weight, so it's still very thin and it's kind of fuzzy. You can see the little fuzzies there. I'm just going to use this on my last round. It's the closest thing I have that's not going to contrast with this colorway too much. While I have you here, let me kind of show you what I've done on the decreasing. So here is my first row of a round of decreases, and in those chain spaces we did chain 3, single crochet, chain 3. I did another round doing the same thing, so those are all chain 3s. On the next decrease round I did the same thing. However, I do think that you can increase to a chain 4 on those 2 middle chains. So you would do a chain 3, single crochet, then do a chain 4, single crochet, chain 4, single crochet, and then end with a chain 3, and then skip a double crochet and work your double crochets along that solid portion. But on mine, I did 3 rows just using the chain 3s, and then I worked 2 rows where I increased it to a chain 4, and this row and this row. I did 2 rows where I increased it to a chain 6 on this last one that I've done, and I still need to do one more. So the second to last decrease row, I moved it up to a chain 7. You could probably still keep it as a chain 6. It really just depends on how it's lying for you. But I'm going to do a chain 7 on the last 2 decrease rows. So hopefully that made some sense, but I really love how it's working up. I wish I had not run out of this yarn at the very end, but at least it's only one round, and I'm gonna go ahead and work that one up off camera. I'll come back and show you what it looks like, and we'll compare it to the original. I have one more of these chain sections left to do. This is where I started. I put that new purple yarn in, and here is where I'm at now. So I've got my 3 double crochets, and this is the last round. So we're just going to chain 3 on that first spot, single crochet in that first chain space. And now here's where you kind of play with your chain length as you're working across. I've been working a chain 7. Work a single crochet in your next chain space, chain 7. Move to the next chain space and single crochet. And that is literally what I've been doing on all of these decrease rows. The only thing that changes is how many chains you're chaining. But the pattern is the same no matter how many chains that you do chain. So it's really easy. It works up really fast. I have 2 chain spaces left. Single crochet into that next one, chain 7, single crochet into that last chain space, chain 3, and now I can just slip stitch to the top of that first double crochet or the chain 3, and we have finished. And here is the final little doily made modern. I just absolutely love how this came out with that variegated, really pretty colorway, and this was sock yarn. So if you're looking for something to do with some sock yarn, some thinner weight yarn, I highly recommend doing something like this. And even though I ran out of yarn at the end, that purple that I did around the last and final decrease round looks absolutely fine. It just looks like it's got a nice little border on it, and it's not a border, it's actually the last row of the pattern. Now I have not blocked this. You probably should block it if you want it to lie super straight, but honestly it has really started to shape up nicely just by flattening it down a little bit. And I think it is supposed to be a little bit wavy and ruffly on those chain rows for that last row, just to kind of give it almost like a border type look. Here is the original. You can see it is quite smaller than what we made here. This is because this was using a very fine weight yarn, probably a cotton thread yarn, and a very, very small steel hook, I'm imagining. But both are just absolutely beautiful. I was really intimidated by this pattern because it looks so complicated. And if you just kind of deconstruct it a little bit, you realize it is not that complicated at all. And now we've got a modern version of this vintage doily. I'm hoping to do many more vintage crochet videos like this. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe. Thanks so much for watching, everyone, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.